Medical disclaimer. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health regimen, including starting new therapies, supplements, or treatments. While we discuss cutting-edge research and advancements in cellular medicine, individual health needs vary and professional guidance is essential. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that neither Dr. Seeds nor the podcast team is providing personalized medical recommendations.
This week on Redox Revolution, we're going to jump into one of the biggest controversies about my new book. Welcome back to another episode of Redox Revolution, and I'm here with Matt and Maddie, and Maddie, you're fluorescent.
She looks like the purple people eater.
I have some issues with the color, but it's like, what is that? Purple?
I'm just
It's
glowing.
Ooh, glowing.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
All right.
today, what we're going to do is expand a little bit on one of the biggest points of debate that's come out of people reading your book, The Quantum Power of GLP-1 Peptides.
It's the
Debate.
biggest debate coming out
know.
of
So-
that.
I don't know. This is going to be interesting.
So to kind of lay the groundwork here, obviously in the book you explore the mechanisms of weight loss, in particular the use of GLP-1 receptor agonists like semaglutide and other peptides. You also recommend a new fasting protocol of 4 days on, 10 days
Again.
off
Oh.
that can work alongside GLP-1s. So, diets are kind of the bane of existence for people. The term alone can just raise stress levels for people. I mean, we had a talk about intermittent fasting a couple episodes ago that I was like, all right, hold on, because that's what I do every day. So in this episode, I want to dive in like how we can discover healthy ways to lose weight and improve cellular health outside of the GLP-1s. I want to dive more into these diet and weight loss protocols that don't involve the peptides, particularly Madison, purple people eater. Go.
So I feel like the wording of how you said it is a little bit off because you said 4-day fast, 10 days, and repeat, but it's not fasting for 4 days.
Okay.
It's the calorie restriction.
Perfect. Let's keep diving into it. So 4 days on, 10 days off. What does that look like? Dr. William Seeds, Redox Revolution.
The reason that is brought into the book is more so to get people off of, because we run into this in practice where we try to get people not to fast actually when they're on GLP-1s because it's a tough thing to do correctly.
Okay.
And in particular, I mean, you just got to, we went through this great episode you brought up before on fasting and time-restricted feeding and so forth, and really got into the aspects of the cellular mechanisms and why it's important and why it works and why it doesn't work and how that correlates with the circadian clock and circadian oscillations. And in particular with the book, what I wanted to do was give those people an option of where I knew they would not get into trouble with a intermittent fasting. It's hard for people that have been doing that for them all of a sudden to give it up sometimes, and they think that they think they can do a better job combining that. And what they have to understand is, when you're working with these let's talk it from two ways. When you're doing a calorie restriction or a intermittent fasting type of process, and let me just say that intermittent fasting to me is also calorie restriction, because even though people so intermittent fasting may be, hey, I don't eat for 16 hours and then I eat for 8 hours and I fit all of my food requirements in that 8 hours. And I'm going to tell you that's wonderful, but I'm going to tell you that in that 8 hours you're not eating as much as you used to eat when you didn't do this type of fasting, meaning that they believe the fasting is the time that they're not eating, but it's truly a calorie restriction because they're not eating as much as they used to. Their calories are definitely going down. It's very hard to eat to get all your
Unless
food
your name's Matt Seeds.
Unless you're Matt Seeds, it's hard to get that 8-hour window like that. So let me just say that's kind of how I look at both those together. It's like you're not going to convince me unless you're just amazing and you can really do well with that. And so here's what's the point I'm making there. When you're fasting or restricting calories, what state is the body in? It's in a catabolic state. Mm-hmm. Catabolic states do what? They put stressors on the body.
So what is a catabolic state, just for the listeners?
Catabolism, meaning you're breaking down things to rebuild, basically. It's what AMPK is all about. It's building. Mm-hmm. It's autophagy. It's cleaning house. It's rebuilding, repurposing aspects of the cell to get ready to go into the mTOR state of anabolism to build. So catabolism is a necessary process to start the engine of making energy. And so when you're breaking down with catabolism and you're amping up AMPK, that puts a stress. That's a stressor on the body. What else does that do? It activates cortisol is activated when the body's stressed. So when you're not eating, the body's going to figure out a way to get glucose somehow. So it's going to go through this process of gluconeogenesis from the liver, which is what cortisol does. It makes the liver produce glucose, and cortisol is a stressor. So people, and this is why we didn't talk about this much in our last podcast, but people need to respect that a continued process of intermittent fasting puts a stress on the body, and it puts a stress on cortisol that then can have a stressor also on the thyroid. And the thyroid you can eventually, over time, your thyroid's going to adjust to the body not wanting to kind of adapt to a slow...
That was my question, isn't it?
I didn't finish it.
Well, you kept turning your chair away from me, so I had to...
That's because I'm trying to go so I don't see you.
I know. So I see you, though.
Not hiding behind a tree. All right. I was just getting to a brilliant point.
You can't keep doing the same thing, though, as well, right? You need to keep changing so that the cell doesn't adapt.
Well, it gets to a state of where it wants to adapt, so it decreases the amount of T3 that's made. So you start to become, you get into this subclinical hypothyroid position. You're making a lot of cortisol, and you think you're doing healthy things by fasting, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you got to be smart in how you're using that fasting, and what state are you in, when you're going into doing these things. Like, some people should never even think about fasting because they're going to make themselves worse. We see that, right? Mm-hmm. Well, imagine that, and then going on a GLP-1 where you're amping up AMPK, but you're also decreasing appetite. Mm-hmm. And so you're doing some things to stress cortisol again. Cortisol wants you to make glucose. GLP-1s don't want the liver to produce glucose. They actually inhibit gluconeogenesis. So you're getting into some issues, and that's actually why you hear me talk about when this newer peptide comes out, the retatrutide peptide, when that comes out and that's being that's FDA approved and so forth, that is going to be a promising agent because it has glucagon in it.
So it won't inhibit. Yeah,
it'll help with that cortisol response. It'll keep people away from the cortisol problem. I think it'll improve the thyroid issue. I mean, things people haven't looked at. So what I'm trying to say is, a lot of thought when I did this book, I wanted people to start thinking of another way of fasting that was healthy. Mm-hmm. Meaning, where could I take people in and out of AMPK and mTOR and being more adaptive, right? And that was it's why I'm such a believer in this protocol of 4 days of a gradual calorie restriction, meaning day one, and this means you. Now, do we talk about the type of diet people are eating and so forth? Yeah, I want a healthier diet. I want a Mediterranean diet. I want maybe a higher protein diet with Mediterranean influence. Those are things you're going to work on. But first, you got to get this process in play. And that's the structure of this diet, which is day one, it's taking in just 50% of your normal calorie intake that you would take any other day, right? Mm-hmm. Then day two is you're going to take in 30%. Day three, 30%. Day four, 30%. And then day 5, for 10 days, you're going to go back to your regular diet.
Not going hog wild, just going back to regular.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
this might be a stupid question, but so 50%, and then are you taking 30% of that already 50% or 30% of your traditional?
30% of your traditional. So you're subtracting 50% the first day, you're subtracting 70% the second day, 70% the third day, 70% the fourth day.
Didn't you say 30?
Well, I said 30% is what you're eating.
Okay.
We'll cut that part.
I just told you another way. So
I like how
and what that does. Go ahead. Tell me what you like. I don't get to hear this much. You've silenced me.
I like how this is just yet another thing aside from some of the peptides that gets cycled, right? Because I feel like most of the recommendations, especially lifestyle ones that we fall into a rut or a trench of it where it's repeating it every single day. Mm. Like, what do you think of the traditional diets where the prescription basically is strict calorie counting? Do you put that in kind of the same category as counting your steps? Kind of like it almost feels like it's a pacifier in a way, not necessarily like it helps at first and then long term you're not really moving the needle, or maybe you're going the wrong way, or you're not thinking about it the right way anymore.
I kind of look at it in what we do in cellular medicine and what we know. I look at that as like an ancient language. Like, we don't do that. It's calorie counting doesn't work here. It's about knowing what your macronutrients are, your proteins, your fatty acids, your complex carbohydrates. It's knowing it's knowing how to utilize what we talked earlier about the circadian oscillations and circadian rhythms of the body, and it's also it's understanding that we don't want to. Remember, we want to have the body adapt, mm-hmm. but we don't want it ever getting too comfortable. And that's why I think that you may appreciate this more, and in traveling more now with SSRP and all the traveling you do. Isn't it kind of amazing how your diet keeps changing and you're actually doing some of the things I'm talking about, and how you're able to, like,
poop? 5 minutes ago when we were talking, when you were going through this, I was kind of just thinking in my head, wow, my 4 days every 2 weeks ends up just being during one of our weekend travels.
Right.
Like, it just kind of naturally falls
It
into
naturally
it.
happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's...
rushing through airports, getting to the hotel, yeah.
Honestly, when that paper came out, and that was a paper that was done in mice, and then it was done in monkeys, because of how close they replicate the metabolic pathways of metabolism with humans.
They're the closest thing, right? Other than us.
Yeah, and how their microbiome changes are very similar. Mm-hmm. That when I saw that paper, the first thing I thought of, like, oh my gosh, here again is this proof of concept of how I live, of how it's so easy for me to mm-hmm. go through this process of the body continuing to adapt based on the calorie restriction process. Now, I don't
even realize you're doing it either.
You don't realize you're doing it, and And it's a little different than the 4 days. I mean, ours may be 5 days and then,
It's not
2
a perfect
weeks.
science.
And but it's a constant change. It's why I say, it's the same concept of why I say, if you're going to do a ketogenic diet, don't stay on it for longer than 3 or 4 months, convert to something else, keep changing it. And I think the Mediterranean diet is the best diet to be able to kind of put more emphasis on protein or more emphasis on plant-based foods or more emphasis on fruits or more emphasis. You can take that Mediterranean diet and do a lot with it and then utilize it in the space of what I just talked about, the 4-day restricted feed, because again, it's about the science. And what is this showing us? It's showing us that it's improving the microbiome and the diversity. It's improving short chain fatty acid production, which is crucial, which is butyrate and
propionate and acetate.
And propionate in particular. And it's also doing something to improve bile acid production, which is very important. Secondary bile acids are important that we don't pay enough attention to. So it hits a lot of places that I think the science is going to continue to get better with. But I actually see it not just in myself, but that process really works well for people who follow that concept. And the easiest way to do it is to talk to people that do what we do, but you have to also be eating correctly, and you have to, you have to be exercising, all those kind of things.
Well, you already talked about some of the. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh,
see, he lets me ask questions. Do you get the same cellular autophagy effects from the 4 days of decreasing your portions that you do from those 48-hour, 72-hour fasts?
You do to a certain degree. Yes. I mean, the complete time restriction, like the 48, 72 hours, you get other added benefits. You get even more aspects of influencing stem cell, IGF-1 production, stem cell repopulation, better quiescence. You get other added benefits of not just improved autophagy, but mitophagy. And then it's when the refeed starts, you get that IGF-1 change that has such an influence on the stem cells, which are real important.
So is there a time where doing that type of fast would be better than the 4-day?
Well, that's a time. So my thoughts on that are, that's something you do. That 48, 72-hour fast is something you do 3 or 4 times a year. You don't do that all the time, because that puts again, it's a stressor, and it depends on when you're doing it, and you got to be. I think you got to be smart. I admit here. Let me be honest. I've made the mistakes of. That's where I started in fasting, was taking that research from oncology, which was brilliant stuff. 20 years, 15 years ago, and. So I hit my home runs with using that time restriction of 40 to 72 hours in patients that were more metabolically stable, had less comorbidities, and I made colossal failures in the people that weren't ready for that increased catabolism, and I made things worse for them. And I learned that, okay, use your head here, and you got to be smart in picking out the people that you can that can benefit and are ready for autophagy, ready for catabolism like that, ready to go through that process appropriately. Because the other ones I would make, they were just too weak, and I'd make their recovery was tougher and so forth.
What specifically? What made them not prepared? What made them not the ideal person to be fasting like that?
They were just metabolically inefficient. They were more glucose dominant. They weren't using, their mitochondria dysfunction was significant. Their immune signaling was off. It's like you don't want any of those things working against you when you need all those things at their best after surgery, because you're causing besides helping somebody with the surgery, you're also causing injury, and you're creating those like damaged molecular associated patterns. You're breaking down cells where from surgery and so forth that you've got more ATP in the extracellular space. You've got other remnants of things that are going to activate the immune system that you want working for you, not against you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you got to understand all that when you're doing these things.
I'm usually so worried about inflating your ego. I just got to say, you know how I was starting a question and then I seeded and I'm like, go ahead, Maddie, you can ask a question. My literal question was going to be about 48 to 72 hour fasts, but you asked it in a more scientific way.
Read your mind.
So I'm glad we're splitting the labor here. This is nice.
Carrying the team.
Exactly.
I do have a question. So for those patients who it didn't go as well, did you know before they were going into surgery that things had gotten worse, or it was after surgery, their recovery, you can just tell?
No, I just knew afterwards. That if I knew before, I'd mean I was smart. I had to be head on the head. Why isn't this patient progress? Oh gosh, I had them fasting, and they're doing. Oh my gosh, and then I'd have to take a deeper look at, what else is? Oh, you're type 2 diabetic. That you're not doing a good job with your A1C. Those things that orthopedists sometimes don't do the best in looking at all the things that I felt I did very well, and I'd make those mistakes of and assumptions, or I wouldn't go into more depth of getting those people prepared for that type of fasting, which I think you got to be really smart about. And you rarely hear me in our practice. It takes a while before you can talk to a patient where we get them into a state of where you can offer that type of service with a patient, because I know what's going to happen because I was there. I'm going to make things go bad, right? But you guys have heard with some of the people when we start talking about more options of healthy things we can do as we get up into the stages of making people more efficient and metabolically flexible. That's an incredible tool. And you've heard the patients that have said, boy, I've never felt better when I did that type of fat. Like I was on, and that's a great. But but you also hear they say they want to do it more, and you're like, no, don't do it more.
You're gonna ruin it.
You can make it bad, right?
I know we kind of touched on this in the circadian clock episode, but to kind of like tie a nice bow on it and really loop some of this back to that, because a lot of this stems from that beginning conversation. I want to get your opinion on a lot of this research about the neuroprotective effects of intermittent fasting, specifically. And I have a few written down here: the synaptic plasticity, brain-derived neurotropic factors, ketone metabolism.
I mean,
again,
boy,
I know,
trigger words.
Yeah, I know we talked about that a lot a couple episodes ago, but to kind of bring it all back into this, to summarize it in like a few quick sentences, how does that all tie into what we're talking about today?
Miracle-Gro.
Miracle-Gro. Well, it goes back to fasting or calorie restriction is a way to improve brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is very important in building plasticity, neuronal plasticity, not just structural, but physiological plasticity of these neurons, where that you get this dendritic arborization, synaptic connections. You get more connections with BDNF. You get it's that Miracle-Gro not glow, Miracle-Gro that we coined, that just helps with the connectivity to improve brain cognition, memory, executive function. And so with calorie restriction, you're upregulating AMPK that has an effect on upregulating PGC1 alpha that has the influence on the FNDC5, which is an enzyme that sits in the membrane that when it's cleaved, which can be cleaved by exercise, but also can be cleaved with calorie restriction, you can get you get this irisin that's released, and that affects BDNF in the brain.
It's cool to see how fasting has benefits just beyond weight loss. Mm-hmm. So if we were going to break down everything into today's performance protocol, I almost think we have to set a foundational filter, and then we can do the protocol. That filter being, I really liked how you guys separated intermittent fasting from time-restricted eating. Because like you said, if you're just doing a time restriction, all you're doing is you're eating the same amount, but you're just trying to put it into a different window, and you're not really going to be able to do that. And if you can, that's not really any different. So you're saying intermittent fasting is hitting these like only 50% of your normal intake, only 30% of your normal intake thresholds, and that's important.
Well, all the research has been really based on calorie restriction.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's people have to understand that's the real mechanism. It's the calorie restriction. It isn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then so the performance protocol then comes from today's discussion, which comes directly from the book, which is, hey, every 2 weeks, just take a couple of days, eat a little bit less. And if you're somebody who's traveling a lot, don't try to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to perfectly line it up the same 3 or 4 days every couple of weeks. Just make your life a little bit easier and be flexible. Yeah.
Like your cells.
And adapt to your environment.
I have a question. So
how many questions does she get?
Unlimited.
I'm thinking not a lot more.
Yeah. Right?
Rude. I think he's just scared. What if he can't answer it? What if I stump him? So with glucose and how important glucose is in the brain, when you are doing like calorie restriction, intermittent fasting, how do you know if you're still getting enough glucose to your brain?
Well, so that's a great question, and
That's a really good question.
The brain has priority over glucose, and so it's going to improve. It's going to improve cerebral vascular flow to the brain. It's also going to upregulate the neuronal glucose. The astrocyte is going to contribute more to the donating of how it converts glucose to lactate. It's going to send lactate over to that neuron. So it has mechanisms to adapt, and that's how it does that. Trying to think if there's some other parts of that I could bring in that.
Honestly, I think you touched on a lot of that
Yeah.
If you haven't listened
There's a
to
lot.
episode 27 yet, which as of this episode's release would have been dropped.
How do you remember what 27 was? I couldn't tell you what yesterday was.
I have the iPad. I have the Oracle in front of me here.
Oh, okay.
This is episode 30. That was episode 27. They almost go hand in hand. If you haven't listened to that one yet, I'd really recommend going back, re-listening to that one, and then jumping into this one. It really is a nice compliment.
I'm going to say that this is the perfect complement, that 4 days of that type of calorie restriction, and then the 10 days on, and then getting better at the choice of diet. I really think it's a brilliant strategy because it incorporates, because then you can even incorporate that. You could even you can get better at what you do with your time restricted type of eating. You know, if you're only doing 50% of your diet, well, do most of it, do your best part of it for breakfast, right? Yeah. Take advantage of knowing what the circadian clock can do for you. So if you start working on that, then you're going to get better at that 10 days off, and it's going to continue to build. And I think it's just a brilliant way of working on all of the mechanisms that we try to emphasize in improving efficiencies and flexibility of the cell.
Can I ask one more question here before we sign off?
Yes.
How many questions does he get?
I get as many as I want.
Because you have the iPad.
He gets as many as he wants, because what did he say earlier?
Oh, he said something nice.
He said something really nice, and I haven't heard that from you today. So
sorry.
So,
yeah,
It's also funny that we're talking about eating while you literally look like the purple people eater.
It's a theme.
This isn't a planned question. This is just one I've been thinking about because of how many times we've gotten into diet and intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
What do you think of that school of thought around your gut needing time to like build its lining back up? Like if you're eating at all times of the day, you're never giving your gut enough time to like kind of recover or build that lining again. I don't know if I'm asking that correctly.
You're talking about eating like multiple meals in a row.
Like, you know how this is big in the bodybuilding community where like they have 6 meals. Like they have one when they wake up. They have then big breakfast, something before workout, something after workout, dinner, and then something before bed. And I've seen certain schools of thought, and I don't know if it's true or if it's not true, and that's why I'm asking you, where they're not giving their gut enough time to like rest. Like your gut needs time to realign itself.
Are you on the same like line where it's different, but when people are saying like more smaller frequent meals are better than just 3 big meals? Or are you just meaning like
I think he's talking about continuous eating, like continuous meals.
Okay.
Yeah, regardless of the size of the caloric intake, it's just
well, there's some aspects of that can be detrimental, but understand also that typically these people are also putting incredible metabolic demands on their body too. If they're training to take advantage of that anabolic effect is what they're trying to get from the food, right? They're trying to they're trying to take advantage of that circadian clock aspect of rebuilding, right? But the gut goes through continuous. It's just basically the lining goes through these changes regardless. It's more based on enteric feedback of the enteric nervous system with the central nervous system, with the immune system, that all have to be functioning all together. And so, yes, so actually, constantly making that bowel adapt to continuous energy,
food intake.
Yeah, it can have an effect on that, but it's not it's something it hasn't been totally. There's so much we're just learning right now about how the nerve, how like a tough cell influences an endochromaffin cell that then influences the enteric nervous system that then influences the endothelial lymphocyte that then has an influence back on the innate immune system, and all of those things are communicating. And so just imagine a constant flux of that integral, that very delicate integration of all those mechanisms and signaling are constantly going on and never getting a break. Well, yeah, that can be an issue. And I think over time we see that in that population and we've seen it, where they do have gut issues and they have significant gut issues. I think it takes a while though
for something people like that to pop up.
Yeah, I think it takes I think it can be a long time before that can really become, because you can get by with so much because they're doing a lot of other things that are working to improve metabolism, improve efficiencies. So there's some give and take there, but
so it's less about the lining of the gut and more about the interplay of the systems and the signaling?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow,
because,
look at you go.
Because the lining changes. I mean, you need all those cells to be rebuilt. You need epithelial cells to be connected, to be the connections to be tight with tight junctions.
So zonulin doesn't leak out.
Zonulin, occludins, claudins, and
so for
she shut me down as I was going.
Because you keep looking at me and see that I have something to say, and just look at Matt.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna
I'm gonna look at Grace. Hi, Grace.
So, but for like just a Joe Schmo off the street.
Joe Schmo.
Just Joe Schmo. Is it better or worse to do eat like those just 6 small meals throughout the day instead of 3 bigger meals? Like just almost that continuous, but not quite continuous.
That's a good question. What is better? And I'm going to say that it just depends on how many, what the intake is specifically. You know, what are you doing to feed the microbiome? What are you doing to continue to manage influence the enteric nervous system to do its peristalsis job correctly, right? To move the bowels. What are you doing to maintain the enterochromaffin cells that are doing, releasing the IL-25 and at the beginning, the tough cells release IL-25, and then the lymphocytes in those specific IL-2 lymphocytes, I believe. What are they doing to maintain that adaptive response, which is needed? I think there's just a big interplay there, and I think you can go wrong either way if you're doing too much of either one. I really do. I think it's that's a hard question.
You were talking about the dinosaur the other day, and like kind of the schools of thought as I've read a little bit about this. One of them is going back that far, and it's like, humans weren't eating 6 times a day. They were eating once, maybe twice if they were lucky. And basically that school of thought is saying the gut's not meant to just be processing food all day. But then going to your question where it's like, okay, well, we live in today, 3 versus 6, and it seems like the consensus is, again, you just kind of listen to your body, and it's like, are you hungry? Okay, then eat.
Well, or you take care again of these circadian cues, and you eat most of that. So if you told me, hey, doc, my biggest meal is morning, then later in the day it's a little smaller, and then evening it's a lot smaller, I'd say, okay,
Good job.
You're sticking to the mechanisms. But if you say, oh, I have these 3 big meals, then I'd say, well, you're not doing your best job to mimic and follow those pathways. But again, it's it can be beneficial and it can work against you, and you just got to know more, right? You just got to know more and how to use it.
Ask more questions,
and like you said, Matt, everybody's a little different.
Yeah. Right. Cool.
So that was another good discussion on fasting and understanding more about time-restricted feeding, and I think this just takes us to new levels, right, of where we can go with this show. And I really like where we're going, even though you guys, you're getting better at what you do.
I'm going to cut you off right there. We've had a great episode. If you haven't yet, grab a copy of his new book, The Quantum Power of GLP-1 Peptides. It's not all about peptides, as you've heard. One of the biggest debates that's come out of it has been a recommendation on intermittent fasting. So it's all about the interplay between medical intervention and sleep and diet and exercise and just optimizing your health.
And remember, there's a purpose that I put that type of time-restricted feeding to keep people out of trouble. If they're so inclined to add another fasting type of diet to where I don't recommend they should, but it's a way to keep people out of trouble. So thank you for joining us for another episode of Redox Revolution. Maddie, thank you again for being part of this team, and I can't wait for the next episode. I'll see you soon.